Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to one of our new shows. It is the Topic Show, or the Movie Crusaders Chat About, where we are basically going to pick topics that Brian and I have always wanted to talk about. It could just be something very relative to something that just like came out about like most recent like trailers or movies, or it could be like a specific topic. Like I mentioned on our Jackass episode, we're going to be doing one here in a little while about man tears, movies that made us cry, kind of things. But this is that show where we're not generally talking about specific movies. We're just kind of talking about certain things. It could be about the state of horror films now, the state of rom-coms, the state of whatever. This is kind of just our bullshit show where Brian and I just talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about. And because it's our first episode, Brian and I decided, let's talk about why we're here. Why are we doing this? Why are we talking to you guys multiple times? I think we're over 300 videos on the channel right now after 3 years of doing this. It's because we love movies. We do. And that's what we're talking about today, is why we love the movies and what made us fall in love with movies, what really got Brian and I into the crux of being just like a normal average movie fan to a lover of film kind of thing. And that's basically what we're going to talk about. You guys are going to get to know us a little bit more. Now, if you guys watched the Weekend Crusaders show that we did last year, you guys probably going to hear a lot of thwhat we've pretty much already talked about in passing on that show. But this kind of gets into the mind of Brian and Sean a little bit, which is a very scary place. But
it can be.
That's what we're talking about today. And as you guys are watching this, if you guys want to let us know why you guys love movies, what made you fall in love with movies, put them in the comments, whether it be on this video, whether it be on Facebook or what have you. Let us know why you love movies as well. So yeah, Brian, take it away. I'm gonna put you on the spot because I've just been talking for like 2 straight minutes.
Okay. It's kind of like, well, first of all, I first fell in love with movies. It really goes back to the first movie I saw that I remember. And it sounds completely cliche, but the first movie that I remember seeing in a theater was the original release of Star Wars. At the time, just Star Wars, not New Hope, it was just Star Wars.
Are you talking about when it like actually came out?
Yes, when it actually came out. When I was alive and old enough to remember a movie back in 1977. Let's get that out of the way now. Yes, I'm old.
Okay. Yes, I did that intentionally.
But I remember seeing that movie in the theater and just being blown away by it. I think at the time they came down the aisle. If you wanted to stay and see the movie again, you just gave them some more money. The usher came around and collection so you could watch it again. I remember riding home in our we had a full size van, and the seats, like the second row of seats, they were 2 separate ones. They could swivel. So my brother and I got in those seats, pretending we were like in the Millennium Falcon guns and stuff. And I just, for some reason, I have that memory burned in my mind. And of course, through my whole childhood, Star Wars was like the end all be all of everything, from my bed sheets to my toys to my posters and everything. It was just Star Wars was my life. So that was kind of the first thing that really inspired me to hit movies. What was the first movie you remember seeing?
See, now, like for me, like when I was little, I was all about wrestling and stuff like that, because I literally remember my very, very first memory of my life, which my parents say is BS because it's like you shouldn't remember that young, was sitting on the couch with my brother and my dad watching WrestleMania 2, which I would have been like 1, but I remember
Mr. T, right?
No, that's the first one. WrestleMania 2 is Hogan and Bundy in the cage.
That's right.
That's what I remember. I remember Hogan and Bundy in the cage and sitting with them. Now, granted, we always had movies on and stuff like that. Now, I would say the first movie I saw in theaters was that I remember was probably Oliver and Company. And I don't remember much about it because I think as a kid, I probably fell asleep halfway through it. But when it got on VHS and stuff, I remember loving it. But I don't like to use that as like my first movie because that wasn't the first movie that really made me go, oh my God, movies.
So what was that for you?
What's that?
So what was that movie for you? That
movie for me was 2. There was 2 of them. One was an actual kids movie, and one was a movie that I should probably not have been watching at such a young age. And the first was a kids movie, was Land Before Time. I would watch Land Before Time every day. And granted, yes, anyone who's that a parent or babysitted, you have those kids that will literally just watch the same movie on repeat. It's over, rewind it, put it on again. Land Before Time was that movie for me. Still probably one of the saddest moments in cinematic history. Like I said, we'll talk about man tears. This is definitely one of those. Is when Littlefoot's mom died. That's scarred into my brain. I'm never gonna not get emotional during that scene. I honestly, though, shockingly, I don't think I've watched Land Before Time, and it's been at least 10 years. It's been a while since I've
But it
watched
did
that
start your
movie.
love affair with John Bluth for things like Rockadoodle.
Shut up. Now the other movie, and we've talked about this movie on Weekend Crusaders and stuff like that, was Jaws. I love dinosaurs and I love sharks. I also love snakes. But a shark movie, Jaws. Now, granted, Jaws is technically horror, but I mean, it's not really like. I mean, in terms of like the shark eating people, like yes, little kids should be watching that movie, but it wasn't like this. Like it wasn't like watching Friday, the 13th.
No, it's more like watching Jurassic Park.
Exactly.
And actually, there's less shark in that than there is dinosaurs in Jurassic Park.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And I remember, and I've told you this to you before, is when I was little, everyone thought that I was going to grow up to be a serial killer because I was the only kid that cried when the shark died at the end of the movie. Because
I would say the jury is still out on that, Sean. So
I mean, they haven't caught me yet, but because I rooted for the shark. And we've had this conversation on Weekend Crusaders when we talked about Jaws. The shark's not in the wrong at all in that movie. The people are. They went in there. They actively go out there to hunt the shark. The shark is in his own fucking home. Y'all are going into his house. He's hungry. He's going to eat. It's not the shark's fault. And so I always cried when Bruce the shark, or Jaws, whatever you want to call him, or she, I don't think they ever said if it was a male or female shark, but whenever it died, I always cried. But I loved watching those two films. Now, granted, there's other movies you could talk about. There's like you could pick it out of the air and stuff like that. But those were the two movies for me that I would consider my start for movies. It wasn't. I loved watching those movies, but those movies, those movies were at home.
Mm-hmm.
My first real loving going to the theater wasn't until 1993, which we all know what movie I'm talking about. Which we'll get to that. But for you, obviously, was it still Star Wars for you? Just constantly going back and rewatching it in the theater?
Well, that's just it. See, okay, because we're going to hit on the age thing many times. 1977, there wasn't VHS. Really, it wasn't.
Betamax?
No, it wasn't until really the early 80s, I remember 1983, I think it is, we got our first, VHS player, or first video player. And the thing is, there weren't really rental stores yet. I mean, they popped up shortly thereafter. But the closest thing you could do is go and, we had our library, you could put your name on a waiting list. You'd wait a month and a half, and they'd call you, oh, it's your turn to get Tron. And you go and get it, and you get it for a couple of days and whatever. And the rental stores that did then pop up, they all on top of the rental fees, which were huge at the time, were you had to pay a $30 a year membership fee on top of that and stuff. So really it was kind of a big deal to get to watch any movies. So we really only watched it at the library. But then once, the video stores did kind of become more prevalent, and obviously got rid of the membership fees, things like that. I lived at the video store throughout high school. I got to be such good friends with people that worked there. And even though they weren't my age, it was some 20-something-year-old guy, and I was, 16 years old. And I remember one night, the guy, because they had free popcorn whenever you rented a movie. One night, there's a ring at my doorbell. I answer the door. The guy has a big garbage bag full of popcorn. He's like, "Here, I thought you might want this." I'm like, "Okay." It's they knew my name, they knew where I lived and everything. But no, I lived there. I got really into horror movies at the time for some reason.
I'm gonna touch on that with my own personal experience with that, but keep going.
I think at the time I also had Fangoria magazine subscription, things like that, and so I was really into horror at the time. But yeah, so I mean, home video it played a big part because, like I said, through high school, because my brother and sister are both older than me. I'm the youngest kid, and so by the time I was entering my junior year of high school, by that point my brother and sister were both off to college, so I was alone at home. So I did nothing but watch movies most of the time. And of course, then I got a job that involved it and everything too. But I'll stop and let you
Yeah, no, for me, like I said, I pretty much like movies and pro wrestling is pretty much all I watched when I was younger. It wasn't like I said till like I said I remember seeing like Home Alone 1 and 2 in theaters. I remember seeing Terminator 2 in theaters. But I mean, like I would go with my parents, stuff like that. First time for me where I actually was like alone watching a movie by myself, I was 8. And it was I want to say we were living in Cincinnati, like a small town, near Cincinnati, or like a suburb of Cincinnati. And my older brother, because like you, I was also the youngest, so I kind of just got parked in front of the TV, like most 80s 90s kids did. And he worked at the movie theater. And so he would basically, like, we'd get out of school, he'd come get me because he's 10 years older than me, and then he'd have to go to work. And some days I would hang out at the movie theater and like just watch movies, and so he could just dump me somewhere so I wouldn't go home by myself because mom and dad were at work. And it was when a special film came out in the summer. It was I'm pretty sure it was because it was a summer. That's why I was there so much. Because during the day, I think mom was home, but in the summer, I had to go hang out with him. Jurassic Park came out, and naturally, I had been like, "Oh my god, I want to see Jurassic Park," but it's rated R. It's like you're not of age. And it's like I didn't comprehend that. Wasn't Jurassic Park rated R? Or was it PG-13?
PG-13.
Well, everyone thought it was rated R back then because of PG-13 back then. I mean, granted, I was 8. I was still underage.
Yeah.
To go see it, but everyone's like, "Oh no, dinosaurs eating people." Which I was that kid, and my mom loves taking pride in this. I was that kid that through school, when the parent-teacher conferences happened, the parents were like, "Sean's a good kid, but Sean really needs to stop correcting the teachers when they say dinosaurs' names wrong." If you're going to teach it, fucking know the names the right way.
So, I think I was with you on that. Not
yeah.
This is obviously it was before Jurassic Park, but I remember doing like science fair projects and stuff. It was always dinosaurs.
Exactly. And so teachers didn't like me because I would correct them when they said the names wrong. So when Jurassic Park came out, I was like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing ever." And so my brother was just like, "Hey, come on in here. Sit in here, be good, don't make noise, don't make anyone have to come in here, just stay in the corner, quiet, don't let anyone see you." And so I got to watch Jurassic Park by myself. And then it got to the point where it was like 8 days in a row. I would just get work, I would go with my brother, and I would sit in there and watch Jurassic Park. I think I literally watched Jurassic Park, for a solid week straight before, I can't remember, either A, I got caught, or B, he was off work, and then I just never went back with him. But that is where I think the love of movies really kind of started for me, because I mean, it was more than just cool dinosaurs on screen, because when you watch Jurassic Park 8 days in a row, you start to pay attention to other things. Now, granted, did I get some of the jokes at 8 years old? No, of course not. But you started to pay attention to the actors and the characters and all this kind of stuff. And the once again, 8 years old, brain's still not really fully functioning like a normal person should, but I started to appreciate certain things. So I started to really like my dad's a huge Star Wars fan. Like you, like I only saw Star Wars with the VHS copies. So I had the little VHSs or the recording, illegal dub recordings off of TBS or whatever they had for Star Wars, and that's how I watched Star Wars. But I didn't love Star Wars. Like, it was always on, just like it is always on now. And my dad and my brother loved him, and I was just like, "Oh, cool, it's a space movie." But after seeing Jurassic Park and me kind of figuring stuff out movie-wise, Star Wars, for some reason, made more sense to me, or I appreciated it. That and Indiana Jones, and even other movies. And then in 97, it was 97 when the re-releases got released, right? 97? Yeah. I remember my dad he was so excited not to go back and see them in theaters, but to take me to see these in theaters. Because I was born after all three. So I had never got to see him in a theater experience. And to him, that was like, he was a kid on Christmas morning, because he got to go back and relive those moments, but he got to relive it with me. And that's when Star Wars really kicked in, because then I was like, "Oh my God, I want all the toys, I want all this," because that's when the resurgence of Star Wars happened. And then, like with you, horror movies really started to become important to me because those were the movies that, no, Sean, you're not allowed to watch those.
Yeah.
So most kids, you'd always try to sneak downstairs and watch them when like I'm gonna totally put my dad on the spot here, but like you would be upstairs asleep in bed, everyone's asleep, dad's still awake, and you hear the saxophone music. You're like, Dad's watching a dirty movie. So you sneak down the stairs and you're like, oh, and then you're like, ew, and then you go back to bed. Well, my brother, he would be the horror movie guy. So like I remember the first two horror movies I remember ever catching glimpses of was Poltergeist, when I saw the clown and the tree, and I was like, fuck this, and I got scared. And then I don't remember which one it was, but it was one of the Puppet Master movies. And I literally watched like a puppet like kill someone. And I was like, holy crap, dolls can kill people, And then obviously, clowns scared me because of It coming out in 1990. I didn't realize clowns could kill people. And all of a sudden, but that was a TV movie. It's not the same thing. But granted, once I got older, like in like middle school type stuff, my best friend, Ryan, his mom had like this like membership with Hollywood Video where we could go in and we could rent, I think it was like 5 movies a day, like 1-day rentals, 2-day rentals, and it didn't cost us anything. She just gave us the card and we could go in there and we could rent whatever we wanted. So like for the whole summer, Ryan and I, it was about a mile walk every day. Yes, in the 90s, they just said, okay, cool, bye. And we would just go walk a mile down the road to Hollywood Video. And we would go and we basically went to the Hollywood section or the horror section. And we'd start right at A and we'd just take the first 5 movies, go
Seriously?
back, watch them, come back, take the next 5. And we went through the whole horror section. And that was our summer. Our summer was literally us hanging out. We'd play occasional video games when we needed a break. And then it was literally plowing through the entire Hollywood Video horror section. And it was a big fucking section.
Yeah.
So
about horror movies, especially like I think part of it's because it's supposed to be like the forbidden things. Like
exactly, you're not allowed to be watching these.
I don't think I really watched them at home, but my parents they pretty much like just gave me one of the video cards, and but the problem is I couldn't drive it at the time. So but a lot of times what I'd do is I'd go over to a friend's house who he lived within walking distance of a video store, and we would just rent horror movies all the time. We went through the Friday the 13th series, went through the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and all that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, I started getting those subscriptions to Fangoria magazine, so I started learning about a lot of the other stuff. And at the time, you go into a video store and you're just going by the front of the video box, like, this looks nice and gory, let's watch this one. And I think I remember the first R-rated movie I saw in a theater, like when I turned 17 and could actually buy a ticket and go into the theater I'm supposed to, was Friday the 13th Part 8, I want to say. Something like that. So I mean, horror movies at the time were kind of a big deal for me. And it was, around that time, like when I finally turned 16 or 17, was kind of in high school. Because I mean, before that, I watched movies, but I wasn't like, I was in love with movies, but only certain movies. I watched the Star Wars movies. I loved Indiana Jones. I loved E.T., things like that. But I wasn't really super into movies. Once I hit high school, part of it was the fact that, like I said, I lived at the video store. And so I started just renting kind of everything. Part of it was actually, I will say, a broad prop. Premiere Magazine. This is the first issue of Premiere Magazine. It was Dragnet on the cover, also featuring The Untouchables and Beverly Hills Cop 2. This came out in 1987, and I just happened to see it. I was at a gas station or something. It turned out it was the first issue of this thing. And before this one, there had not been a magazine really dedicated strictly to movies. I mean, this is before Entertainment Weekly, anything like that even. But I got that, and for some reason, I got a subscription to that, and it just it always talked about like upcoming movies and stuff, and it was exposing me to more things like not just the blockbusters, but Oscar type movies and things like that. So I got a little bit more exposure to that, and then it was just within the next couple of years is when I got a job at Suncoast. For those of you who don't know, because it's not around anymore, Musicland, Sam Goody was a company. They made a store called a branch called Suncoast, which they basically sold movies, VHS, and eventually laserdiscs and DVDs.
When did they get rid of Suncoast? Because Suncoast was still around like 5 years ago when I lived in Nebraska.
Oh, they've been gone for a while now.
Oh, really?
But I mean, probably 5 years ago, I'd be surprised if there was 50 stores left in the country.
Okay, because when I lived in Nebraska, whenever I did actually go to the mall, I always went into Suncoast.
Yeah, but because at its height, I mean, there were stores all over the country. It got to be pretty big. But they sold movies. They also sold lots of movie merchandise. They had posters and T-shirts and
Oh yeah.
all toys and all kinds of stuff. And I went. I was shop there, and then I decided to get a job there, and I loved it so much there. And I started out part time, eventually became an assistant manager, became a manager. Basically, spent 10 years working for this company, and that is still to this day my favorite job I've ever had because all day, every day, I'm just surrounded by movies. I'm dealing with movies. Everyone I'm talking to loves movies. The employees around me are all want to talk about movies all day. The customers that come in are talking about movies all day. I'm giving them recommendations. They're giving me recommendations. We're talking about things. And that did a lot to kind of expand my tastes. So I'd learn about movies and actors and people I didn't know and things, and they'd recommend stuff. We'd watch stuff because I was surrounded by everybody who worked with me, loved movies. We all went to the movies several times a week. And this is before he had AMC A-list stuff. So we're paying full price for these movies.
Oh yeah.
But it was just working there and just being surrounded by it. I think that is probably the main thing that brought my love of movies to a new level, because it just made me, I watched so much more. I talked about it. I basically, eat and breathe movies all day long, and just being around fellow movie fans was big. And this is, at the time, this is before like the advent of really the internet kind of thing. So now, I mean, you have all these movie communities where you can talk movies and things with people all over the world. But at the time, it's like, no, you got to find your group of friends and do that. And so that was probably the main thing that brought my movie love to a whole nother level.
Yeah, that was that was my thing. It's like my best friend, we did that whole horror movie thing and it was fun. But I love you, Ryan. If you're watching this, I love you. Been best friends since 4th grade. I love you. But he has the worst fucking taste in films. Like, he hates everything. Like, it was one of those things where I always called him out. I was like, I think you actually secretly like a lot of things, but you're afraid to, like, admit it because you think it's going to be uncool if you don't like something. Because every time we go see a movie, and he was like, it was good. That was good. That was good. And I was like, all right, so yeah, I really liked it too. And then we get to a group of people, they're like, oh, did you see this movie? I'm like, yeah, right. I liked it a lot. He goes, that movie sucked. The movie was crap. I'm like, bro, like, what are you doing? So I was like, it was also very hard to watch movies with him because if he found something funny, he would rewind it 20 straight times. Like, I remember I stayed at his house one night and we were watching Nutty Professor, and he rewound that first dinner scene where they're all farting around the table like 20 times. And then with Dumb and Dumber, which is his favorite comedy of all time, he rewound the bathroom scene like 20 times of just watching Harry with diarrhea, just going, oh, like this. Like, I was like, dude, it's
a very funny scene, but it's like,
yeah, it's like, dude, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. He's like, one more time. And every time he's just fucking dying. Like, it's the first time we see it. And I'm just like, yeah, it was funny. Like, the first 3 times. And now I'm just like first 3 times it's funny. The next 3 times I'm laughing at you laughing at it. And now I'm just like, okay.
Can we move on, please?
Yeah. I hate this movie now. You've officially made me hate this movie. But so I didn't have that group of friends because, like I said, with Ryan, once we had gotten older, it was pro wrestling and sports. And he didn't really go to the movies nearly as much. So I didn't have those movie people. I didn't have those friends. And then when I turned like 15, 16, my parents were like, you need to get a job. You need to learn what it's like to, have to deal with, money and all this kind of stuff. And so naturally they were like, well, Jonathan, my older brother, his first job was at a movie theater. That's going to be your first job. And I was like, all right, cool. What kind of movie theater? Like, I didn't realize what really entailed. Of course, I got hired at AMC. It was AMC Oakview 24. And, naturally, I hated the job because, A, I had a manager who didn't like me, and B, I was concessions. And when I, went to the theater with my brother when I was younger, he was an usher and a box office guy. So it sounded, when I watched him work, it was cool. Like, he was behind the counter selling popcorn and dealing with grease and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, this is not the job that I wanted. I got paid dog shit. Granted, this was like 2000. But eventually, like, I'm a hard worker and I was good at my job. And eventually, I think after 6 months, I became an usher.
I assume you also got to see free movies.
But and then I was thinking, it's like, okay, cool. like, because we got to see free movies. Like, we didn't have to pay. Like, we could come in and say, hey, what's up? I'm gonna go see this movie. Give me a ticket. And then we also, on occasion, our manager at the time, he would have to screen the movies. So like the film would come in, because it was back when we didn't have digital, so you'd get like 6 reels for one movie, and then he had to put them together, and then he has to play it back so he can make sure there's nothing messed up. And so he was like, well, if you guys want to come watch this with me at like midnight on Tuesday night, I gotta watch this before we let it go on Friday. And so we'd all hang out, do stuff like that. And then once again, I became an usher. And I became an usher, I think it was Shrek was 2002 or 2001.
The first one, 2001, I think.
Yeah, it was 2001. It was like, definitely didn't take 2 years for me. So when I first started being an usher, it was like the first weekend of Shrek and like A Knight's Tale and like all these movies. And granted, I'm a high school kids, like, I don't want to watch a chick flick with Heath Ledger. I don't want to watch a kids movie with Shrek and all this stuff. But as an usher, for people who don't know what it's like, your job is to clean the theaters. When a theater is not open, a lot of us would just go sneak off into a theater and watch the movies. And I must have watched the ending of both Shrek and A Knight's Tale like 30 times. And you got to the point when you could time your watch to know, hey, the final jousting scene in Knight's Tale is about to hit. I got to go watch that because it's awesome. Or, hey, the I'm a Believer part of Shrek is about to hit here. Like, it got to the point when episode 2, Attack of the Clones, came out, all of us had our watches synced to the Yoda lightsaber scene. You could not find a single, no, you could find them. They were all in the same theater. But you knew where all the ushers were exactly at one point of the day, because we all knew that at this time is like, if you walk into the theater at this time, Yoda's going to be doing this and pulling out the lightsaber. And we would all just be like in the little like hallway, just watching it. Going, this is so fucking awesome. Doesn't matter if it was the 8th time of the day. Didn't matter. We just watch it over and over and over again. And that's when, the love of movies came in. Now, there are so many movies that if I had not worked at the theater, I never would have watched.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter, for instance. I remember that coming out, and I was like, everyone was like super excited. I didn't read the books. I didn't even know there were books for that. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's so good. I was like, I don't fucking want to watch the Kid Wizard movie. Like, that sounds stupid. And I watched it. I was like, that was decent. And then I grew to, love it. You're not a fan of Harry Potter, but I grew to love it. But the biggest one, I talked so much mad shit about this movie, which was Lord of the Rings. When Fellowship was coming out, everyone was losing their mind for it. I was like, oh God, this fantasy stuff, like, it's not going to be good. Like, Elijah Wood, really? The guy from Good Son, that guy is the lead. And I remember we were doing a Christmas party, and we were having a big party. It was one of the nights where we didn't have very many late shows. And so we did the big Christmas party, and our Christmas present was that we got to see Fellowship like a week or 2 weeks early, because we'd gotten the film that quick. And I remember sitting in there watching it, and I'm just like, this is so stupid. I'm just going, holy crap, this is amazing. And just fell in love with it. And then, obviously throughout the years, I got promoted to management as well. And then I was that guy that had to put the films together. And I was the one going, hey, guys, I'm going to be viewing this at this time. Do you guys want to come in and watch it? I'll let you bring one friend. As long as they're cool, I'll let you bring one friend with you. And you guys can watch this movie 3 days, 4 days, sometimes a couple weeks ahead of time. I think like American Pie 2, we got to watch almost a month early, because we got it that quick. And we would do that. And that's where, just like you with Suncoast, I was with my people. We just lived and breathed movies. Yes, there were shitty days, because it's a job. But at the end of the day, that is the one job that I probably miss the most.
Yeah.
Because that was my high school life. My high school life was pro wrestling, baseball, and working at the movie theater. I didn't go to parties. I didn't, do a whole lot of
Yeah,
hanging out.
that was me
Brian
for
and
my
I were,
entire like 20s when most people are out partying and getting drunk. It's like
yeah.
I was working there, and so for me, because I got the job actually right after I graduated, because before that I'd been like a waiter or something for that. But right after I graduated, I got this job there, and like I said, eventually became manager. And so I basically spent like 18 to 27 is when I was your prime like partying years. No, I was at the movie theater.
Yeah, it was just like everyone was just like in high school, like I was really good at sports, obviously, because I played baseball and stuff like that. And then I was the pro wrestler, so everyone knew I was the athlete. But I didn't go to the parties and get drunk. I didn't do any of that stuff. I worked at the movie theater. I traveled for pro wrestling, and then I played baseball. That was my high school career, and I didn't mind it. There was never a moment where I was like, man, I wish I could go to a party, or I wish I could go hang out with these popular kids over here, because I was cool with everybody. I wasn't in any clique. I was right in the middle. I was cool with popular kids. I was cool with the dorks and the nerds and the drama kids and all that stuff, because I kind of was in this little middle area, and everyone always came to the theaters, so they all saw me there.
Yeah.
And everyone was chill, and I was always one of those guys, like I was like the cool bouncer at the club when our movie would come out, and you had to card people and shit. And I was like, if you're cool, if you don't come up to me acting like a douche, I'll fucking let you in. If you come up acting like a jackass, like you think you're king shit, I'm gonna make an example out of you, and you ain't getting in. So it got to that point where I kind of had this power over a lot of the like younger high school people, where there's like, Sean, can I go see? Will you let me in this radar movie if I come in? It's like, if you're cool, I'll let you in. And so like I kind of had this like unwanted power over this shit. But I mean, like, I would say, like, for me, that working at the movie theater, like, granted, I was in high school, that was my college years. Because when I was in college, I was stressing about, bills and loans, and I wasn't at the movie theater anymore because I asked for a pay raise and they said no. And I was like, well, I have bills now. You're paying me dog shit hours. So I was getting like real jobs. Granted, real jobs was like working at Best Buy. And I was still wrestling and playing baseball. But like, to me, like, doing stuff that would constitute as like college, like parties and like, granted, with the movie theater people, like pulling pranks and doing stuff that was very college level. That was when I worked at the movie theater.
Yeah.
Like, whenever we would get out super late, because sometimes we wouldn't get off work till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, especially when Lord of the Rings came out, because the movies were like 3 hours long, and they would start the last show at like 11 o'clock every night. We would always go to Village Inn at like 3 o'clock in the morning, or IHOP, either one.
Yeah.
And we would just hang, because we were still all like riding high off the shift, and we'd be just hanging out and having fun. And also I was like, oh crap, we got to get up for school in like 2 hours. I guess we're not sleeping. And like, I could write a book about the adventures of working at a movie theater, whether it's the movies themselves, whether it's the customers you dealt with, breaking up fights, getting into fights with customers, breaking up, people hooking up in a theater, some of the shit you find in a theater. It was so much fun. If only the pay was better. I would never have left. I would have gladly stayed working at the movie theater and like become like, top manager stuff if I had gotten paid better.
For the longest time, like that's where I wanted to work. I wanted to work in movie theater, but I ended up getting a job at, like I said, this video store, and became manager, and eventually that kind of became a 10-year career there. But then I always heard the pay wasn't very good unless you got up to like the upper management stuff like that. But the funny thing is, you were talking about like when you were managing a theater when you were working there. While working at Suncoast, I tend to make friends with a lot of the guys who manage the local theaters and things like that, because sometimes they'd want to put something in to help promote something, or else they just shop there because they were things like that. So I knew a lot of the guys, and especially this one manager who managed movie theater, and I got to be really good friends with him. And he would let me go in and watch whatever movies I wanted when I come by. He's like, oh yeah, go on in, watch whatever you want. They got to the point where he started inviting me to come by because, and also I had a friend who started working there too as just a part-time employee. But when he had to, on usually Tuesday or Wednesday night, when the new movies, like you said, come in separate reels, he had to assemble them, and they had to watch them to make sure everything looked good before they opened on Friday. He started letting me come in. Real quick,
one of my favorite things I ever did, because we did this as well, was that we would because if anyone, no, obviously very few people have seen the inside of the box, like inside of the upper area. The booth is what we called it. Because when you go to the booth and you're putting these reels together, the wall is literally just tons of films, and they're all trailers. They're film trailers hanging on a nail on a board. And whenever we were bored, we would basically put together like a 45-minute trailer reel. We would just go, which trailers haven't we seen? This one, this one, this one.
Yeah,
this
is
one.
like pre-YouTube, so it was cool.
Yeah, we would splice them all together, and then we would find a theater that wasn't playing anything, and we would just play this 45-minute trailer reel. We would just all sit back and watch all these trailers that we just hadn't gotten to watch. And that was always one of my favorite things I ever did there, was creating these trailer reels of like 45 minutes of movies. But continue. I knew if I hadn't brought that up, I would drop.
That's because actually we'll lead up to kind of a similar thing. Is that he would let me go there and watch the movies when they put them together, you know, and kind of have to screen them. So it'd be like him and me, and there'd be usually a couple other employees who were closed that night would come in. Once in a while, you know, some other employee who worked there would come in just for that, because he told them kind of the same thing you did. If you want to come in, maybe bring a friend if they're going to be cool. You know, we'd bring in pizza and shit and hang out and watch movies. And it got to the point where I remember True Lies. It wasn't his theater, but a different theater was assembling. He was invited to go. He said, "Yeah, you can come on, bring a friend, whatever." By the time we got there, the theater was half full. I swear to God. And after that, the higher ups like, this has gotten out of hand. You guys can't be letting other people in to watch movies. But he'd still let me come in. And the funny thing is, it got to the point where I'd go in on a Wednesday night, usually Wednesday nights. And he'd be like, "Well, I'm close," and because sometimes I go and hang out with him in the booth while he's, you know, assembling them and stuff. And he kind of taught me how to thread the projectors and everything. And this is still film, of course.
Oh yeah.
And so it got to the point where he was like, I'm going to start up the finishing paperwork. You want to go ahead and upstairs and assemble the films? Like, sure. So I'm up there working for free. I'm assembling the films. I'm threading. I was even starting the last show of movies in the projectors for him and stuff like that. I'm sure he totally would have gotten fired if they'd known this. But not only, I mean, I got to do that. I got to, you know, he would like give me posters. I remember
that was also one of the best parts of working at a movie theater is the posters and the standees, because when they were about to throw them away, they're like, they would just it was
these
like,
standees that are way too big to put in your house, but I take them home anyway.
No. But like when you worked at a movie theater and you knew what day of the month that we were gonna get rid of all the excess posters, it was like Lord of the Flies, because they would the upper floor, they would just lay out all the posters, and it was almost like elementary school book fair, first come first serve. Whoever got whatever posters, they're yours. And we would fight. Like, we were like, no, I'm getting this one. Fuck you. It got violent. And it's like, I still have like probably like 50 of those things. Like, you could, because you always put them
up. I have tons of posters. Now, some of them are because we sold them at Suncoast, but a lot of the posters I have are ones I got from the theater. Now, granted, in most cases, it was like, you know, after they were done with them. But in some cases, it was like, yeah, they sent us 4 of these. You want one? Here, take one, you know? So I
remember one of my favorite. Granted, at the time, I hated it profusely. But now it's one of my most memorable like New Year's. I remember I was working New Year's Eve, and I wasn't happy that I was there. Now, granted, it wasn't because I had like a girlfriend and I wasn't going to a party, and I just didn't want to be there. And they were like, "Sean, we need to, while we're here and we're dead, why don't you put a standee together?" And I hated putting standees together because
I put a bunch of those together for free too. Yeah.
What's that?
I put a bunch of those together for free too.
Because the directions sucked. They never fit. The pieces never fit perfectly at all. And it was a standee for clock stoppers, and it was a motorized one. And it took me 3 hours to put this stupid standee together, and we never put it on the floor. And I was every day. Because we had a theater where it was like we had
because who's going to bother promoting clock stoppers? Yeah,
exactly. But because we had my theater, because it was 24 theaters, so we had a main concession stand and we had a concession stand on both sides. Mm-hmm. Now, when I worked there for the first 2 years, all 3 concession stands were always open, and then I got to the point where they're like, all right, well, we called it A side, B or main side, and then C side. We were like, well, A and C side, they're not as busy. We don't need to keep, you know, working all these employees on the side. We'll just all put them on main side. So we were like, we'll just cover all the whole concession stand. We'll put all the standees in front of it, kind of like a wall, so they know that's not open. And my clock stoppers wasn't good enough to be there. Like, I put it together, like it looked good, but they were like, it's clock stoppers. We're not going to put it. So they stuck it on the second floor in the back where no one could see it. And every day I'd go to the break room and I'd just look at it and be like, fucking 3 hours of my life right there. And then they eventually just got rid of it. And I was like, but I think back at that back to it now, and I'm just like, why do I remember this? Yeah. I can't remember what year. I think it was like 2002 going into 2003. But I remember just putting that thing together and just being like cussing so much because no one would help me. They'd all keep on going, how's it going? I was like, it's actually going really hard. Do you want to help? No, I'm good. And
I actually enjoyed, because between Suncoast and then once in a while at the theater, for my friend the manager, I assembled who knows how many standees, and for some reason I actually enjoyed it. But yeah, there were some of them
12 feet.
But some of them got so big and some got so complex. And ones you used to get the motorized shit, which never worked right. And you're like, and even if it did work right, it's gonna be broken in the first day when some kid pulls on something, you know.
I'm pretty sure it was a clock stoppers. It was I think it was trying to mock the Back to the Future because he was like this thing, and it was just him doing this, the arm move.
Which would look bad with it.
Yeah. But I for some reason I remember that it was fucking clock stoppers, and I was just like, I hate this. And then I remember watching the movie, and I was like, this is the movie I wasted 3 hours putting a standee again.
Yeah. So you're talking about your wall of trailers. I remember when I used to go up in the booth, there's basically a giant closet. You open it up and there's just like shelves and shelves and shelves of these trailers. And we do the same thing. Sometimes we just string a bunch together to watch them, or something would come in and, you know, we weren't assembling a movie yet. We're like, well, I want to watch this. Let's go ahead and thread it up and we'll watch that. Well, yeah, because I got to take a bunch of those home. Some of them I even like cut out clips and like made like
yeah, because for people who don't know, and granted they're digital now, so they're probably all put into it. You would get this sheet and it would be like, let's just say Blue Crush. Mm-hmm. Here's Blue Crush. It's by Universal or whatever studio. I can't remember what Blue Crush was. And then it would have a list of 5 trailers. And these were the 5 trailers that had to be on Blue Crush. So basically, you know, and a lot of it would just be like, you know, same studio movies or something, you know, around the same age group or something like that. And so a lot of them were just like, oh, God, I'm so tired of seeing this trailer put on this thing. Like, it got to the point where, like, we would cuss out reels. Because, like, we'd be up here, like, because, like, it looked, if you ever been, like a garage with a guy who really is good with taking care of his tools, and, like, all of his tools are on his wall, and, like, he, you know, draws chalk line outs and stuff. That's what it was like. Each spot had a reel on it with, like, a nail in the wall with the reel hanging on, and then it would have the title below it. And it got to the point where, oh God, it was like Big Fat Greek Wedding or something like that. We kept having to attach that reel to everything. And we would just curse that fucking reel. It was like, fucking Big Fat Greek Wedding, I hate you so much. And we would just have to grab it. We would grab it so aggressively, just angry and like splice it together. But what I remember, like, what I always hated doing was after you put the whole thing together, the whole reel, which
on platter, yeah.
Was like this like you got, obviously my hands are off screen, but I mean it was a massive thing. We always had to you always had to put gloves on. You had to put your hand on the reel and you had to let it spin so you could feel where the reels stopped. I think it was when we had to take it apart. It fucking burned. And you went because you're just letting this reel like run super fast through your fingers. You had to wear white gloves so it wouldn't rip your skin. And like it burned.
So you could feel basically the tape where you had to connect.
Exactly. And then until you felt a nick, and then you'd stop, and then you had to like go back, find the tape, rip off the tape, and then break the reels back up. I hated that so much. Hated it so much. But one thing we always did was someone who was which, you know, we would have done it to you if you were like that. The first time anyone would reel their first ever projector, we never obviously would give them a live feel, like a live movie. We would give them like old footage kind of thing, something that didn't matter. And we always had ones that we would trick fire. So it would like do the whole like rip burn thing. And we would always do that because we're like, all right, you know, you have to get this thing filled, you know, within 30 seconds, you know, and you got to make sure everything's going. You got to make sure the film is in the right scope and everything's going with. And it was a trick reel where everything would be going through fine. And then all of a sudden it would just start going and watching them just go, I go, what did you do? You're so fired now. And we always did. It was always like the welcome to the booth, because when you're a booth person, like you're basically like the Phantom of the Opera. Your job is to stay in a dark.
It's all essentially one. Well, in most theaters, one giant room with all the projectors for each theater.
Yeah, see, and with mine, because it was big, like A side had
Yeah, they probably had separate ones for
Yeah, it had 10 theaters. So it was one whole long corridor of 10 projectors. The main area had the 4 big theaters, and there was like 2 in one room and 2 in another room, and then the other side had the other 10. And a lot of the times you were kind of like this guy in a wood shop or like in a workshop. You had a desk, and then you just kept walking down the dark hallways, just peeking into each, little room, into each theater room. And you were just kind of, everyone forgot you were there. Like no one, like, I was like, who's in the booth right now? I am. So that's Sean? Yeah. Dude, I haven't seen you in like a month. It's like, because I've been up here. It's like you were like the Phantom of the Opera. Whenever you would come downstairs for break, everyone goes, oh my God, Sean, I missed you, bro. And I was like, I've been here every day. Like, you guys all forgot about me. You left me upstairs. But it's like when you're a booth person, you're the forgotten person. You're like the guys who do the truck in the middle of the night, and the workers coming during the day. It's like, whatever happened to that guy? He fucking still works here. He just works overnights, But yeah, it's like, and same way with you with Suncoast, you were basically kind of working your own version of Clerks.
Oh, absolutely.
Where you're like, who would win a fight between blah blah blah, and you guys would have like this debate and shit. Like
most of our days were spent like arguing and debating movies.
Yeah, like that's the dream. It's like, it's granted now. I mean,
and you had all the bad customers you had to deal with, of course. So Clerks was just like, yep.
Yeah, and then you get the I'd have to deal with the customers too. Like, that movie sucked. I want my money back. You were in there for over halfway through the film, so that means you don't get your money back.
Pick it up with the studio. I just show it to
you. It's like, no, it's like if you left in like the first like hour of the first 40 minutes of the film, depending on how long the length, like we always like however the length of the movie is, we had to cut off. Like as soon as it hit the halfway mark, no more refunds. Kind of things. Like you ate half your
theory about that. Yeah,
you ate half your food. I'm not gonna. Clearly, if you felt like you ate half your food before you realized you didn't want it anymore, you ain't getting like you watched half the movie. Like, I'm sorry, you're not getting a refund for that. And so, like, it's just, I loved that movie theater experience. Yeah, because I could keep talking, for another, hour or so about the movie theater experience while working there. But I made so many friends working there. Granted, there's maybe only a handful now that I probably still talk to this day. But it's been 18 years since.
Yeah, so when you stopped working there, did your love of movies continue at the same level, or did you come back to it at some point? Or?
It was the funny thing about it is I remember the last movie that came out when I worked there. It was Van Helsing. But what was great is because I had developed such a family there and such close-knit friends and stuff like that for the next 4 years, I was basically like kind of like you with those guys. I never had to pay for anything. I would walk in and this is going to sound egotistical, but this is fucking true, because I had so many stories and so many things that happened to me while I worked there. Like, I once got in a fight with 16 customers during the opening night of Training Day, and I beat them all up until the cops showed up. So I was the guy who beat up 16 people in Training Day's opening night. And I, did this and I did this and did this. And I was this legend of Sean, as egotistical as it sounds. They dubbed it. I didn't. And there'd be times where I would walk in and I'd be going in to pay because I wasn't going to be an ass. But like, Sean, your money's not good here. I'm like, dude, I don't want you to get in trouble. They go, you're Sean. Your money's not good here. And then like I got to the point where I just got used to it. I didn't go to the box office. I just went to the entrance, and you get a newbie who's like, sir, I need your ticket. And I go, seriously? and the new kid obviously is like, yeah. And then you would just see somebody who knew me running up like, no, let him in. Let him in. And the new kid's like, what? And they go, that's Sean. And then all of a sudden the kid goes, You're Sean? I'm like, yeah. Come right in. Do you want popcorn? Yeah, I'll pay for the popcorn. No, it's on me. Dude, you're a legend. I'm just like, what the fuck have they been telling you? Like, tell me what they told you.
Well, that's like, you're there and you may not have these friends, but then now you have this whole network of people. It's like,
oh yeah,
like at different theaters I worked at, or at different Suncoast I worked at, I got to know the managers of other theaters and things like that, or people just worked at theaters. And I remember there was a time, I want to say it started in like 1998, 99, where a guy who worked for me at Suncoast, his roommate was a manager of a theater. And so we got to go kind of do the same thing, go see movies there and stuff whenever we wanted. And then this guy told me about a thing where apparently they have what they call these trade screenings, where like a lot of times, well, I think it's like some kind of weird requirement. They have to, because they have to know what they're showing, is like the general managers, like the higher ups at these theaters, like all the theaters in the area could go to, they have a one theater in the area, like it was just in the Chicago suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
And so that this one theater would always host them. And the general theaters from anybody in like the Chicago area could go to that theater. It's usually like a Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock or some shit like that. And you get to screen some movie usually quite early, sometimes a month early, sometimes 6 to 8 months before it was going to come out. And you get to go to this movie. And, a couple times he took us along. And then a couple times he was like, you know what, I'm not gonna be able to make it, but you guys can still go. Because you just go there and you sign in. And so we would start going and just signing his name. And they didn't check anything, because basically they figured if you knew about it, you were supposed to be there.
Exactly. Like we had that too. Whether it like for like critic reviews, like we would have a special. It'd be one of our small theaters, and we'd be showing something that isn't out yet, and someone would come in and they would have like a card of the movie. It would basically be like a little miniature poster, and if they had it, we were just like, hey, we're screening something, and it's like if they have this ticket, just let them through.
Well, we didn't have any tickets or anything. We just walk in, and it got to the point where the one guy stopped working there. But he'd given us the phone number to call, and so we'd call up this theater that I was hosting them, and we talked to the manager like, hey, you guys, I'm managed whatever theater. Like, do you have any trade screens coming up this month? And he'd say, oh yeah, on Tuesday the 24th we got this, and so we'd show up. The actual manager wasn't even involved anymore. So we would just because we knew where they were, we would just show up and go to. I got to see Fight Club like 6 months early. I saw Gladiator like 8 months before it came out. Some of these things.
The earliest time I ever got to see something like that early was when I was younger. I still don't know to this day how my dad got these, because my dad was a buyer. He wasn't in the entertainment business by any means, but for some reason he came home, like somebody he was working with or whatever, they gave him these. He had like the actual VHS. I'm talking about the box for it and everything of Ace Ventura and Major League 2. And it was like a year before they came out. Like he had them in, which is like, they're not even in theaters yet. How do they have them on VHS? Because I remember like watching them both. Because Major League, I love the first Major League. So Major League 2, I didn't know there was a Major League 2 and Ace Ventura. And I remember watching these things. I'd go to school. I was like in second grade, and I was talking about like, no one knew what the hell I was talking about. And everyone thought I was just this big liar, especially for Major League 2, because no one knew what Ace Ventura was then. And then my dad was just like, Sean, you're not supposed to be talking about that. I'm 7. I'm like, why? How?
Yeah, like for video stores, they'd get these screeners ahead of time, months before they came out on video. But they were usually after they came out in theaters. Like we'd get them shortly after they came out in the theater. They'd send you basically the screener like advertising, because they're supposed to be basically for your video buyers. Like for a small video store, it's like, oh, I want to watch this. Oh yeah, that was good. I should buy this for my store. Yeah. Of course, I worked in a chain. We didn't do any of our own buying. It was all done at the corporate level. But they'd still, some studios, not all of them, would still send them to our store's attention store manager. So I had this library of free movie screen. Of course, I had the little message across the bottom, saying property of Warner Brothers, do not copy, blah blah blah. We'd get those like super early. But to get them that early, I don't know. Those are probably intended for like the actual like theater bookers or somebody.
It was. I didn't know what these were, and my dad was like, "Hey, here's some new. Hey, Major League 2. Do you like Major League?" I was like, "Yeah." Watch that. I was like, "Here's this one. It's Ace Ventura. I don't know what this is."
That's like Living Color, yeah.
Which I didn't. I wasn't allowed to watch Living Color at that age, so I didn't know who Jim Carrey was. But I just thought it was the funniest damn thing. But yeah, I got to watch those like because I think those both came out like in. It was 90. Was it 94?
Ace Ventura was 94. No. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like 92, 93 when I saw that. And so yeah, like I had a full year of Ace Ventura. Like, and we got to keep them. Like we had that VHS for I think I watched Ace Ventura like 10 times before anyone else actually got to see it. But no, to answer your initial question, like I would say like after I left the theater, not that my love for the movies went away, but it's just because I didn't have that outlet. where I was with everyone every day. Now, granted, I left the movie theater and like within 6 months later, I was working at Best Buy. So I mean, I was working at an electronics store. You know, we had movies and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of the people that worked at Best Buy, they were like they liked movies, but they didn't love movies or anything like that. And so, but I was still closely, friends with everyone at the movie theater still. But it's one of those things, you don't work there anymore, so you kind of fall out because you're not in the know with the stuff that's going on there. But yeah, there was that moment where I kind of not necessarily fell out of love with it, but there was a blind spot. Probably between like 2005 to like 2007, 2008, where there was a lot of movies that I would have seen like instantly that I didn't go see. A lot of it was because I just didn't want to go to the theater because I was still kind of butthurt on how I was treated. Now, granted, like I said, whenever I did show up, they were like, open the door, let Sean in, and all this kind of crap. But it was just, I kind of fell out a little bit. And it wasn't until, I would say around 2010, or no, it wasn't 2000, that was 2008. It was 2008 when Dark Knight came back. When they first announced Heath Ledger was going to be Joker, and I'm one of those people that said he's going to kill it. When everyone was bashing, I was like, they would not have casted him if he wasn't going to be able to do the job. And that first trailer came out, and then they started doing all the internet like merchant, like publicity shit and all that stuff. Where the movies I started to get that itch again. Like I said, during that time, I still watched movies a lot. I didn't really have like that outlet to talk about it and all that kind of stuff. But when I worked at Best Buy, I was the movie guy. There was me and this other guy who named Richard, and he worked at Blockbuster. So he was a lot like you. He worked at a video store, so he was constantly always in that stuff. So he would always watch all this niche stuff, and I always watched like the big picture stuff. And we were the two movie guys. And we would constantly play movie games at work, and it was always everyone against us. Like the movie game that I had you guys play. We would on a day in Best Buy when we were bored and then we weren't that busy, it would be the entire store versus me. And I would still beat them. It'd be like 50 against 1. And I would still beat them and stuff like that. And so I constantly was just always having my brain working with it, but I wasn't seeing as many of the current stuff as I would like. And then, stuff I just went right back into the flow of it. And like, because I was Mr. Movie Guy to everyone there, everyone kept coming to me going, "Hey, Sean, did you see this movie? What'd you think? Hey, Sean, did you see this movie? What'd you think? What's your thoughts on this movie? What's your thoughts on this movie?" And it got to that point where I was the go-to guy on my thoughts about movies, if it was worth seeing or not worth seeing. If you did see it, what were your favorite scenes? And then, of course, because I worked in home theater, hey, Sean, is there any, like, I would have customers after I had them buy this big sound system and all this stuff. They would come in. There's one dude in general, he'd come in every Tuesday whenever the new releases came out. And he says, "What new movies came out that I can show off my sound system and my Blu-ray to people?" And I'd be like, "Hey, here's this movie. There's a scene about 40 some minutes in. It's going to blow them away." And then he'd come in the very next week, "Sean, tell me what came out." And they'd be like, "Oh, nothing came out this week, but here's some other movies." And I had this persona, and that's
one of the best things about working at a video store is pushing my taste on other people. No, watch this movie.
Yes. They go, what about this way? Nah, you don't want to watch that crap. It's actually like a good movie.
I would tell people like as an employee, I would not have this power, but as the manager, there's sometimes I'd be talking, usually a regular customer, not just a random nobody. But I'd be like, "Oh, this movie's great." I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, tell you what, you buy it. If you don't like it, you come back. I will let you return it, even though we're not supposed to do that. And one of the employees would be like, "Hey, you don't let me do that."
Because you don't have the power.
I have power. Go away.
Or whenever you had to put like a DVD thing together, like I was always putting like the good shit up front, and like I would try to hide the other stuff I didn't like.
Absolutely.
But I had constantly had these everyone come to me about wanting to know my thoughts on movies, and then I was like, "Hey, why don't I do something about that?" And granted, at the time, Facebook was doing like, "Hey, review movies" and all this kind of stuff, where you could like basically do what Letterboxd is doing now. Mm-hmm. And I had like 1,300 movies, like actual written out reviews with star ratings and all that stuff. And I had people who were liking them and all that stuff. And I was like, I need to be turning this into a website. I need to make this like a thing, because everyone seems to want to know my thoughts. I love doing this. I want to keep doing this. And of course, I was still going to college for broadcast communications, because I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, or I wanted to be something entertainment. And so I was like, I can do this. And I remember, obviously it wasn't the Movie Crusaders, or it wasn't Sean's Movie Crusades. Like, it was like, oh God, it was something like Average Joe review, or the average something. Because I didn't want to do Average Joe's, because I was like, people are just going to think dodgeball when I do that. But it was something like, hey, I'm not one of the snooty critics that's like, oh, the cinematography was brilliant and breathtaking. And I was like, I'm a regular guy. I like my movies. And for the people who just want a normal person's perspective on a film, that's me. And that's what I'm going to do. And I planned this for like 6 years, coming up with how I'm going to review them and how I'm going to rate them. And I would watch like Double Toasted and be like, oh, I love how they do their things. Or back when they were Spill.com and their reviews were animated. Like that was the best. And then they lost some copyright thing. But I just planned. And then finally, I moved down here to Louisiana in 2016. And I had no friends down here. I had my family. But once again, I didn't have that reach, that group of friends anymore to talk about movies. And I would watch like Screen Junkies, and I just stumbled upon them one day. And then obviously that introduced me to Movie Trivia Schmodown, which obviously, the Major League Movie Trivia group and stuff like that. And I was like, oh shit, I do really, really well watching these. Like I'm better than the competitors. I should get on this. And then it got to the point where it's like, if I would just start making my channel, and then I was good enough to get on there, I could get thousands of viewers and all this, and I could start making this a thing. But I had to fucking just start. I just had to start doing it. And that's when Sean's Movie Crusades was born. First review was Crimes of Grindelwald. And I just started. I had planned doing the show for like 6 years. And finally, it was just one day, I was just like, just fucking do it. Just shoot one. Just get in there, shoot one. It's not going to be good. And if it sucks, just redo it. And now here we are today with the Movie Crusaders. We're 3 years in, over 300 videos. Granted, we, still have a very small crowd, but it's growing. And yeah, I love movies. Like I said, you and we met through the movie trivia leagues, because we did that. And I remember the first time I met Brian, I had to play against him. And everyone was like, Sean, you're going to get your ass kicked, because Brian's the best at this. And we had a very competitive match. We had a good match. And then we became friends after that. And Brian and I would do stuff like this, where not recorded, where we would just...
I still remember it was like, because we kind of got in the same faction in this group. So we had these group chat kind of things. We talk online. But I still remember there's one night, I don't remember why, the two of us ended up just talking. I think we had a group and the other guys left.
I think it was one of those nights. I realized that
you told me about your wrestling career and all this other shit. And
well, it was like we were all on with everybody, and everyone started going to sleep. And what I kept finding funny was that you and I seemed to have the same kind of sense of humor.
Yeah.
Because you would make a joke and I would laugh, and everyone else would be like, "Yeah, okay, Brian," and I would be like, okay, this guy's pretty funny. And then everyone went to bed, and you and I, because we're night owls, we just kept talking. And it was like, we were just going over everything. Like I said, my pro wrestling career.
I think we had this entire conversation.
Exactly. This is a conversation that Brian and I have probably had about 15 times. We've reiterated this conversation about 15 times. And I'm like, let's just shoot this damn thing. Yeah. Which is why this type of show is now started, because we probably could have hundreds of episodes of us just talking about random shit. Because we would watch something for Weekend Crusaders, the movie would be over, and then we'd still be just talking about random movie stuff for 2-3 hours afterwards.
Because both of us have said, and I know I said to you when you asked me if I want to be a part of this, I'm like I don't care if the channel is successful. I mean, obviously you do, and you will want to be successful. But I was like, if I can get on and talk about movies, I don't care if there's a camera on or not. So yeah, absolutely, I'll take a part of this if we get to talk about movies for a while. Because for me, it was when I left Suncoast, it was mainly because I got married and I had to get a real job.
Life found a way to fuck you out of movies.
Well, just retail had a obviously a rough schedule for retail, especially if you're married. So like my wife is a, regular daytime job. She was a teacher. And so it was like, I wanted to find something that our schedules would work better together. So I wasn't, gone all the time. And so I left that and I worked for like a year in an office job. Then we ended up moving. And so I ended up like going back to retail, a bookstore of all things. So nobody there to talk about movies with really, except one guy I kind of latched on to. We both like movies.
Yeah.
But that was basically, I needed a retail schedule because I went back to finish college. So I had to find a flexible schedule, which that had. But I never really fell out of love with movies, but I didn't have that outlet to talk about movies because I still went to movies all the time. I had amassed a rather large home collection of VHS and DVDs and all this stuff. And so I still love movies, but like I remember like the last several years I worked at Suncoast, I'd throw like these big Oscar parties. And they were tons of fun. We had tons of food, tons of people would show up. And by the time, and I started working at the bookstore, and I, gave invitations. I put one up in the break room and everything. And like one person showed up because they're like, we don't care about the fucking Oscars. So it was kind of like, okay, I guess we're done with the Oscar parties. And then it soon just became like me and like two friends I knew in town that would hang out and watch it. But then over the next couple of years, I mean, I was doing like you did. I would do like some reviews on IMDb and the message boards there you'd kind of post on. And then I found a couple forums after that, online forums, again, just more like message board type things. One was for DVDs, and then eventually there's a Blu-ray one that we'd talk about movies, just movies you love, and share stuff. And, but you'd also talk about where to find the good deals, things like that. But then, like you, I stumbled across this community, the Schmodown family community, which I hate to give them credit, but that's how I came to this group. And where you actually, interact, talking to people via, this live online. And that's where I kind of finally found another group of people that love to talk about movies as much as I do. And yeah, we just hit it off. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like living down here, I'll this is gonna sound sad and pathetic, but I don't care. Like I don't have any like close friends here. Like I got work colleagues that
I have
I'm
one
friends.
here. I have one
friends
friend left here. The rest of them all
I
moved
have-
out and started their lives.
There's a few that like I will talk to on like daily on occasion. We'll hang out like once every 6 months or so. I'm like, hey, I care about this person. He's a friend, but we're not like, it's not like my best friend Ryan where we would hang out all the time and we're always on playing video games or talking, or like he knows the deep, the personal life of Sean, like deep down Sean, and I know him and stuff like that. But through this community, now granted, this community, there's a lot of jaded people. There's a lot of people who really are up their own ass on shit, but you find
unnecessary drama. Yeah.
Yes, unnecessary drama. But you find it might be one person, it could be 15 people that you just find these people that are like, these are my people. And so when people go, Sean, don't you have, friends? I go, yeah. I go, my best friend lives in Minnesota. I go, my other best friend is Brian, who lives in Illinois. I was like, I have another friend in Tennessee. I got another friend in Seattle. I got another friend in New York and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then I've all these others like yeah, but you don't have anyone live here. I go, I don't need to have them live here. We're on webcam all the time.
We'll even watch movies together online.
Exactly, because of StreamYard. I don't think it would have really worked with, because what was it? Was it Google Hangouts that we were first on? And
yeah.
I don't know if that would have worked, but StreamYard.
Well, I had times where if we had to both own the movie or something. I have it on that. We just like 1, 2, 3, start the movie.
Exactly. And so like luckily technology allowed this. Now, granted, you could probably say thank you COVID in that sense, because that's really what kind of allowed this to kind of become a thing. But I know I can pretty much contact Brian at any time, and Brian's going to be there to respond. And for the most part, if there's any time that Brian needs to talk or Brian wants to get online and shoot the shit, watch a movie or do whatever, I'm available, and vice versa. Our other movie community friends, they're not as accessible, but we can still go to them and talk to them and stuff like that. But
they just aren't the night owls that we are.
What's that?
They just aren't the night owls that we are.
No, they're not the night owls they are, and some of them don't get our humor like that. And there are times where Brian and I we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And there'll be times where one of us will probably get annoyed with the other for a little while. So like we take a day. No, what? No, never. But that's also the reason why, if you watch the earlier episodes of Sean's Movie Crusades, we had a lot of people on the show. they're all friends for the most part still, but they just, for some reason, they just didn't mesh. Like the shows, they were fine, but there just wasn't that energy, that click. And like I said, there were so many times
They just weren't I think a lot of times they just weren't as enthusiastic about coming here. And
well, it was either
like I said, I want to talk about movies. I don't care.
they either made it feel like a chore, or they tried to go too prestigious with the stuff. It's like, I want to have fun. Like if you're passionate about the movies, like when I get very passionate or angry about a movie, I'm very angry and passionate. And same thing with you. You're not to my level, but you're very passionate about your stuff too. And when we both love something, we are very passionate about what we love. And the other ones, nothing against them, they're all great guys. I would have them on anytime. Their energy doesn't match our energy because we have.
They just want to shit on you.
What's that?
Not all of them, but some of them just take pride in like
wanting to just be
condescending.
Yeah, they want to be condescending trolls, and I'm just like, this isn't fun. This isn't a fun show.
And this isn't directed anyway specifically, by the way.
No, I mean I could be explaining 15 people, or I explain one person. If you guys think that's you, reevaluate your shit.
If you think it's about you,
if you think I'm talking about you, reevaluate your shit. But Brian and I, we have these kinds of conversations 3-4 times a week sometimes, and it got to the point where it was just like, hey, I know you don't want to do reviews. Like we'll occasionally do a spoiler review because there's just a good movie. Like I think our first one was Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep is the one we both wanted to talk about, I think.
Yeah, we were just like, we gotta talk about it. And then Terminator Dark Fate, which for some reason has like fucking 30,000 views or something, which we still to this day don't know why everyone's watching that one review. But it was we found like this perfect, like, hey, when we're on, like it works. We're fun. We have good banter back and forth. We're able to mess with each other and have fun. And then we created the Weekend Crusaders show. I dropped the Sean off the Movie Crusaders, and I just made it the Movie Crusaders. And Brian's now an integral part of the show. I wouldn't do the show without Brian. I wouldn't do any of these without Brian. When I think of a new show, I immediately go, would this work with me and Brian? And if it does, then I pitch it to Brian. And there have been certain shows where Brian's like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, okay.
And I've always been like, hey, if you want to do that one solo, it's great, but I'm not going to add anything to that. So.
Yeah, but and like I said, Brian learns from me, and I learn from Brian, and we have fun doing this, and that's why we do this stuff, and that's why we did this episode, this first one, because we love movies. There's a lot of people who watch our shows. I think you guys can tell we love movies, but a lot of times we're either super jaded about a certain film. Now, granted, we do stinker movies, and we really, really shit on those movies, but we like to have fun talking about those movies. But bottom line is, a lot of people don't know us, and they go, why should we watch you guys? Why do you guys do what you do? And that's why we wanted to do this episode. From the first moments when we were kids, with him in Star Wars and me with Land Before Time and Jaws and Jurassic Park, love grew for these movies. And whether it be failed Oscar parties, or now you're just like, fuck the Oscars, I don't want to watch the Oscars anymore. Or I don't really got to the point yet. Bullshit. To Brian going, hey, I don't want to watch any sneaker films, but then he just watches random shit. Where it's like, I don't even know what the fuck that is. But granted, like the last 2 movies I watched, you're like, I don't know what those are, kind of thing. But we have fun and we love it, and we enjoy doing this, and we hope you guys enjoy watching these. And like I said, if you guys have people that are your Sean or your Brian, bring them to this. Like, we love talking about movies. If we ever got a big enough of a following where we could do a live show where you guys could talk on the side and we would interact with you, we would do it. I think maybe there's some people who are probably like, I don't want to talk to those people, but everyone's got to have a person to do this with. Brian's my person. I'm his person when we talk about this. Now, Brian's got like 15 other people. He cheats on me on the side all the time. That's why we're shooting so late, because he was like, oh, I'm doing, this thing with 3 other people. And I was like,
here's the thing, though. I just a quick.
He's like, let me defend myself here.
No. I just want to say that I like to, play movie trivia games or do whatever kind of things. I do that all over the place. But when it comes to talking about movies, just like chatting or about what we love, it really comes back to this show, because Sean's the only other person I found. I mean, obviously there are other more passionate people out there, I don't mean to say more passionate, but there are other passionate people out there. But I think that like you said, you got to find that person who you mesh with well. I know people that are super passionate about movies, but their tastes are so different than mine that it wouldn't even be fun to talk to each other because
Bottom line is,
not gonna.
Brian found his person because we both equally despise Napoleon Dynamite. That
It
was
didn't
our
hurt. It didn't hurt.
That's our thing. You hate Napoleon Dynamite? I hate Napoleon too. Let's be friends.
Did we just become best friends?
Yes. But yeah, that's it. And I mean, we hope you guys enjoyed watching this. Like I said, we're granted, we're gonna do other topics on this particular show. They might not be as fun as this. We're gonna try our best to make them fun.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's even
we
some
had to start out with basically an
Crusaders.
introduction to us.
Yeah, exactly. There's certain episodes of Movie Crusaders where like that show was not that entertaining because we were talking about movies that just weren't that fun. Granted, we're gonna try to pick topics that are fun. Granted, just today, little sidebar, because this is how Brian and I work. Is I was at work and I was on my lunch, and granted, this video is not coming out for like 3 more days, so we're dating ourselves by like 3 days. I watched the first trailer for Texas Chainsaw Massacre that's coming out on Netflix. My first thought was, I gotta text Brian about how shitty this movie looks. And then we just, like, my whole lunch break, we're just talking back and forth about how bad this movie looks because we both love and appreciate the 2003 one.
And yet, we're both gonna watch it.
I'm gonna watch for the channel. But had we not had this channel where I review movies, I probably wouldn't watch it. I probably wouldn't. But I feel obligated, just like I felt obligated to watch Home Team. Which there will be a review for that coming out here, but it's if it's not already on the channel now, because like I said, this is coming out on Friday. But that's what it is. Like, something movie related comes up, and the first person I think of the message is Brian. Now, granted, he's like, I already know. It's like, well, okay, kind of thing. Or his unwillingness to be excited for the Batman that comes out here in a month. And how when they announced that it was going to be 3 hours, he immediately went, oh, where I went, awesome. Like, that's the beauty of this. And like I said, I wouldn't do it with anyone else. Like I said, we've grown for over a year now. We've been doing this, Brian and I, and I don't see us stopping anytime soon. Like, and that's the thing is, like, we told everyone with Weekend Crusaders, we're taking about 1 to 2 years off of that show so we can give us time to watch different movies. On anyone else, that's the end of that show. We're never going to do that show again. With Brian, I know in a year or two from now, we're still going to be doing this. And we're like, hey, I think it's time to do
the because so often we went through like, oh, how about this movie? Oh, the date doesn't work out. We got to wait till
exactly. So I know in 2 years, when we bring back the Weekend Crusaders, if we decide to, I'm still going to be doing this with Brian. Like, and we'll decide at that point, do we want to go back to watching 5 movies a week and all this stuff? Because near the end, it got really, really bad.
We might trim it down. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll figure something else out. But I know that we're going to be doing this for a while. And we hope you guys are on that journey with us. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did, hit that like, share, subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, we'll get to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, or come out on the channel right now, like I said, there should be a review for Netflix's Home Team Happy Madison movie, which Brian and I hate Happy Madison movies, but I watched this one because it's a football movie. There's also a review for HBO Max's The Fallout, so check out those reviews. We also just did a Jackass franchise retrospective where Brian and I talk about the first 3 Jackass films because Jackass Forever came out today, and there will be a review for that, as hard as it's going to be to do a review for basically a skit movie. But next week is our monthly special show. It's our first one, and we've actually been planning. I think we've had this one in the books for a few months now. We're finally getting ready to do it, and that is Happily Ever After ? Where we are going to go over 50 rom-com couples and decide amongst ourselves, do we think that they lived happily ever after once the credits rolled, or are they a part of that 50% of divorce rate where things just did not work out at the end? I'm sure we're going to piss a lot of people off during that episode. And you know what? Brian and I kind of relish that a little bit. So that comes out next week. Like I said, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Come back next week. We got more reviews coming out. We're finally starting to get movies coming out here. Granted, February's still not a great month. I think the biggest movie is Uncharted, which I'm terrifyingly anticipating that movie because I love the game franchise and I'm really worried about the movie. But once we hit March and you get the Batman and all that stuff, we're gonna start getting some stuff going through. But these shows are every week. We also got, like I said, we got an actor, actress, director showcase. We did not actually mention who's going to be on that show during Jackass, but we're going to be doing Paul Rudd, Natalie Portman, and Tony Scott. We're going to talk about those three. And then, of course, at the end of the month, because of the Batman, we're going to do a franchise flashback where we're going to be talking about the Batman movie universe. So be on the lookout for all those. And until next time, my name is Sean Waskrug. That is Brian Michaels. We are the Weekend Crusaders. And in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.